There are expectations for every NFL player and for every NFL team. Not surprisingly, someone like Patrick Mahomes, a now two-time league MVP and two-time Super Bowl champion, has very high expectations entering each and every season. His expectations wildly differ from a fourth-string rookie corner drafted in the 6th round to a team that missed the playoffs the previous year. And every year there are teams and players that surpass expectations they had entering the year, like the Eagles did in 2022. There are also teams that fail expectations beyond measure, like the Broncos did this past year. There will be teams that do the same in 2023, and in today's video we are going to break down 3 NFL teams with the most to prove next year. And there is a lot to dive into for all 3 teams, and without further ado, let's begin. And the first team we are going to discuss in today's video is the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jags for the past decade, excluding 2017 of course, well, there's really no way to nicely put this, they were bad. The most amount of wins they had prior to 2022 was 6, which they achieved back in 2019. That is, of course, excluding 2017. They were the definition of cellar dwellers outside of a magical run, in which they went to the AFC Championship game. And after a 1-15 year in 2020, it almost looked like they were going to ruin a rookie quarterback who had been touted as the guy since he was a freshman at Clemson dating back to 2018. They made a terrible decision to hire Urban Meyer, they gave Trevor no weapons, and he was hung out to dry. To give you an idea of the weapons Trevor Lawrence had just a year ago, his leading 3 receivers in 2021 were Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, and Laquan Treadwell. They finished dead last in points per game in 2021, averaging just 14.9 per game, and there was fear they ruined the player who was viewed as the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. 2022, and more specifically the second half of 2022, was a much different story. After heading into their Week 11 bye at 3-7 and coming off of a double-digit loss to Kansas City in Week 10 and their 6th loss in their last 7 games, Jacksonville turned it around. They finished the year 6-1 and scored 188 points in the final 7 games, averaging 26.9 points per game during this stretch. Had they kept that 26.9 points per game for the entire season, they would have finished 4th in points per game behind the Dallas Cowboys. And after doing all of this, from a 3-7 start to division champs and winning a playoff game, you may ask, well, what do the Jags have to prove in 2023? And the answer is a lot. They have to prove this wasn't a stretch of half of a season, and they have to prove they are here to stay. And this next point, I will admit, isn't exactly fair to this group of Jags, as much as I want to acknowledge this will be brought up time and time again, but the last time we saw this franchise win a playoff game, they collapsed for multiple years after. And in a division where you have 2 teams selecting in the top 5 in Houston and Indy, and Tennessee looking like they are on the brink of a complete rebuild themselves, Jacksonville has to be licking their chops at what looks to be their division to lose next year. Houston's roster is not good, and there's a reason they're picking in the top 2, and Indy's 2022 season was nothing short of a nightmare. And with increased pressure comes increased expectations, not just for Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson, but for everyone. And one player that worries me is 2022 number 1 overall pick Travon Walker. Travon was drafted as a project player coming out of Georgia, and the plan was to develop him into a good pass rusher, and 1 year later, I have concerns. He finished 11th in rookies in pass rush win percentage, winning at a rate of 11%. This was behind rookies like Michael Clemens of the Jets, Josh Pascal of the Lions, and Kingsley Enagbare of the Packers. And not surprisingly, it was also behind first-round pass rushers like Aiden Hutchinson, George Karlaftis, and Kayvon Thibodeau. The Jags aren't the same old Jags, and they aren't the team everyone circles on their roster for an easy win. It's not a hot take to expect the Jags to win the AFC South, and when previewing divisions for the 2023 season, I will take them every time, but what will they do next January? They have to prove they can hang with the big dogs of the conference, and that they are here to stay for the next few years. From northern Florida to northern California, we go to discuss the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers have been a very successful team over the past few years and have made it to the NFC Championship game in 3 of the last 4 years. The only season they didn't make it to the NFC Championship game was when they finished 6-10 and had several players go down with big injuries. Nick Bosa tore his ACL in Week 2 in a game against the Jets, and that was a microcosm of their 2020 season. They had the 12th overall pick in the 2021 draft, and eventually traded up to the number 3 overall pick to draft quarterback Trey Lance. Trey Lance had what was effectively a redshirt year in his rookie year, and started just 2 games, and in 2022 started just 2 games before going down with a season-ending injury. Lance will inevitably play a big role in 2023, we just do not know the extent. And what the 49ers have to prove in 2023 is that they can win big games, and this isn't to discredit anything they've done over the past 4 years, as they have been an absolute unit of a team in 3 of the last 4 years. But in 2019, they were up double digits in the Super Bowl before Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs scored 21 points in the final 7 minutes of the game. In 2021, they lost to the division rival Rams in the NFC Championship game, and they went on to win the Super Bowl. And in 2022, they had a very unfortunate sequence of events happen to them, as they had an injured Brock Purdy play quarterback for them in the second half, and they really did not have a chance to win the game by that point. The Eagles dominated the trenches, and Josh Johnson was under pressure while he was in the game. And for as successful as they have been over the past few years, they need to win a Super Bowl. And my fear for the 49ers is, if in this scenario they don't win it all this year, my fear is this is going to translate to the locker room, and guys are going to essentially say or think aloud, what are we doing if we can't win it all? Nick Bosa, the 2022 Defensive Player of the Year, finished the season with 18.5 sacks and an unreal 48 quarterback hits, but he's been around for all 3 of the postseason losses in the Shanahan era, as has tight end George Kittle and linebacker Fred Warner. And those guys have to be sick of getting close to the top of the mountain only to be kicked down in a different way each year. Trent Williams also will not be around for forever, as he will play the 2023 season at 35 years old, and that will soon be an irreplaceable hole to fill. They also have one of the most unique situations in all of football in having Brock Purdy and Trey Lance. And I understand the crowd that will say Brock Purdy did not do much down the stretch, and he certainly isn't going to be their long-term starter, and I understand where those people are coming from. But Trey Lance has thrown 102 career passes, and you cannot confidently say at this point in time, Lance will be better than Purdy based on the small sample we have. And this isn't something the 49ers are going to have to prove as much as what's going to have to go in their favor, and that's injury luck. Because for as talented as players on this team are, like the aforementioned Bosa, Kittle, and Trent Williams, if any of these guys go down, they do not have a lot of depth in the scenario they do. I also anticipate they will lose right tackle Mike McGlinchey in free agency, leaving them with another hole to fill. I think the 49ers have to win next year, as in the Super Bowl, or the view on this team will be drastically shifted, if it hasn't been already. To Western New York we go to discuss the Buffalo Bills, and this one is similar to the 49ers in they have to win. Bills fans are incredibly frustrated with how their season ended, and rightfully so. They entered the 2022 season with enormous expectations, and anything short of a Super Bowl win was going to be considered a failure. And ultimately their season ended with not just a postseason loss, but a beatdown given by the Cincinnati Bengals, and a beatdown given to them in their stadium in a game they lost by 17 points. This was Bills football weather. This was Western New York weather. This was a game Buffalo was supposed to be amped up for, and a game they go out and win and move on to the AFC Championship game. Win in the trenches, kick a team's ass by playing gritty football, and move on. Unfortunately, Cincinnati had other plans as they went into Buffalo and rushed for 172 yards, held the ball for nearly 34 minutes to Buffalo's 26, outgained them by nearly 100 yards, and also won the turnover battle. And if you're a Bills fan, you can say what you want about the Bengals, such as they won because they have a quarterback and a superstar receiver on a rookie scale contract, which allows them to get other good players, or whatever the case may be, but they kicked the Bills' ass. And the Bills had that same window the Bengals are in at the moment too. And 2023 presents a different challenge for Buffalo because instead of Josh Allen having a cap hit of $16 million like he did in 2022, he now has a cap hit of $39.7 million. And that's nobody's fault because that's the price of paying a great quarterback in today's NFL, but it presents a challenge to the front office that's been kind of swept under the rug for the past few years, and it's that the front office has not hit on draft picks at the rate you'd like to see. Everyone knows about Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and Von Miller, but what truly wins championships is having a core of good players and not a couple of stars here and a couple of stars there. And over the past few years, Buffalo has had some very underrated players on their team, most notably linebacker Matt Milano. And for the Stars general manager Brandon Beane has hit on, he's whiffed on his fair share of second and third round picks, which are extremely important to the success of a football team. Dating back to 2019, his second-round picks are tackle Cody Ford, defensive end AJ Epinesa, who did develop more in 2022 and showed some promise, Boogie Basham, and James Cook. And I don't want to kill the James Cook pick, but what I will say is there's a reason Bijan Robinson, the running back from Texas, gets mocked to the Bills quite a bit, because a lot of people don't think James Cook can carry a backfield by himself. But Cody Ford and Boogie were bad picks, and this is where it's going to hurt the Bills. Good depth pieces. And in a conference where you need to get after the quarterback, Buffalo wasn't great at getting after the quarterback as they finished tied for 14th in the NFL in sacks. And after Von Miller went down on Thanksgiving Day against the Lions, their pass rush wasn't great, and not having a great pass rush concerns me. Greg Rousseau runs hot and cold, and he did improve in year 2. I don't want to dismiss his game, but is he going to take the next step and become a 13-sack player next year the way Buffalo needs him to in order to win a Super Bowl? And hell, he may even need more sacks than that. And Von Miller, coming off of a torn ACL at 34 years old, also concerns me. It's hard to imagine he will come off of that serious of an injury and be a 13 or 14 sack player and turn the clock back and be the player he was in his prime. All this to say, Buffalo has to win the Super Bowl now, because pretty soon if they don't, and we're already starting to hear this with Buffalo, given their last 3 postseason losses have been at the hands of the Chiefs twice and the Bengals once, is that they're a great regular season team that folds in the playoffs. Josh Allen, fair or not, is at a very pivotal point in his career. Winning a single Super Bowl is extremely difficult, let alone multiple. But for Buffalo, a team that's compiled 37 regular season wins over the past 3 years, and a team that's won the AFC East 3 years in a row, it's enough of getting division champion t-shirts and hats. It's time to hoist the Lombardi. And that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it would mean the world and help a ton. And until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.